Okay, sweet. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's
Wait,
episode of the
wait,
Southern.
wait. I lied. It's
Hey,
alrighty then.
I'm here for the trip, the journey.
Yeah.
Uh, Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Southern Oregon Progressive Podcasts. As always, I'm Kevin Bell, your host, and with me I have my co-host Betsy Cunningham. Um, Today we have a super special episode, and I'm really glad for the people who can be here. We have Dane Zaner, Ryan Berriman, and Billy Rosso. Ryan Berryman. I will go through what the faces on my screen. So Ryan, if you'd like to go first, and for all the audience's participation, and for so they know they use they them pronouns in the comment section, or if you leave a reply. So you
Yeah,
correct.
hi. My name is Ryan Behrman. I live in Sutherland, and I'm just so thrilled that you guys are having me. I'm an activist in Douglas County. I'm a board member of the Umpqua Valley Rainbow Collective, who you may know as doing the Pride celebrations and festivals in Douglas County for a few years now. And yeah, I'm super thrilled to be here and excited to hear from the other ones on the panel.
Dane, do you want to go next?
Yeah.
Sure, Dane Zaner, he, him pronouns. Douglas County resident, live up near Yoncalla, have been in the community for about 21 years. I work for an agency that helps support people living with HIV and preventing new infections, and then also on the board of Douglas County Gay Archives, which has been around since about 1987. Billy started it actually, and we've continued that. And then last year we started a Stonewall Caucus just to raise awareness around LGBTQS2 plus here in Douglas County, but just an active community member and retaliating against our regime right now.
Thank you, and I'm sure that'll come up in our conversation today too. And then Billy, can you please introduce yourself, the living legend?
Oh, please. My name's Billy Russo. He, him, it is okay also. Uh, I've been around a while. I don't know what else to say. I respect what you people are doing, and I want to be as supportive as I can be. I don't know what else to say.
Well, honestly, I think you'll be putting out the most stories out there because today's episode is going to focus on Pride in Douglas County specifically. More specific than that, I wanted to just talk about the history of Douglas County because Pride has been something that's been coming up a lot more recently, and especially it's a lot more divisive. And I want people to know that it's been around forever. It's been around and it's been a core part of our principles for a very long time. I wanted to talk about the past of Pride in Douglas County, queer issues and things like that. Talk about what's happening now because there's a lot of important issues happening now. Like we're trying to get proclamations out. There's the festivals and stuff like that that I'd like to keep people aware on. Not only that, I want to talk about the future. Where do we see Douglas County maybe like 10 years from now? Dude, because right now we're in my opinion, the throes of a proto-fascist regime, not only just federally, but locally. So what can we do as individuals to make sure that our community is protected and well represented? Because there's sometimes I know I don't feel that way. So again, this is just kind of a free form conversation, and I actually had some questions lined up. So we're gonna hit on the past, if that's okay with you guys. Is that okay with the panel? Start talking about the past, present, and future.
Sure.
So again, Billy, you're probably going to be, unfortunately, my main target today is you started Ruby's House, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I did in 1988.
I
I
w-
went.
I heard a little bit about it, but I kind of would like an overview just to let people know of like it's been here forever and the community's been here.
Seems like it.
Mhm.
Well, let me go back a little farther than that. Back in the early 70s, I was involved in the gay men's health clinic in LA. And we saw probably 500 people a night, twice a week, and it was real intense. And lots of sexually transmitted diseases. And afterwards, when we got everything done and got the place cleaned up, we'd often sit around and smoke a joint and talk about, the things that were going on. And one thing that came up a lot was, what would happen if we ever had a deadly sexually transmitted disease, what that would do to us. And so in the mid 70s, when they started the reports of, I think they called it gay-related immune disease in the beginning, I paid attention. I remembered that. And once it was obvious what was going on, and there were people in my community, my friends who had HIV, and we were trying to take care of them at home by ourselves, I realized that we needed something more organized, but I didn't know what it was. I think it was the summer of, I don't know, 86 or 5 or something like that. I went down to San Francisco for 3 weeks and just volunteered at every project that would have me. And I learned a lot. The project I spent the most time with was the AIDS ARC. We used that term too back then. Anyway, the AIDS ARC, oh shit, I can't remember the name of it now. There was a homeless program on federal grounds that was sanctioned by the Secretary of Health and Education to let us do this, or let them do this camp there for homeless people with HIV. And I came away from that whole experience realizing that the most important role I could play would be to make sure that people had housing and transportation to appointments and access to health care. And I kind of went home with that plan in mind, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And in, I guess it was 88, I kind of decided, I met this man whose he had HIV, and his parents had this big rambling 5-bedroom house in Winston. And they offered it to me to use, if I could get something together to help people. And that's what I did. And the rest of it is pretty much history. It was a home. It provided shelter for people. My policy was, if you knocked on the door, I was going to let you in. And didn't mean I wouldn't throw you right back out or have you arrested, but I'd let you in. And that's kind of the way it went. And the really main goal I had for myself was to not add to anybody's suffering, to try and provide a space where people and families could kind of deal with this and reunite. More than once, somebody would show up at the door or be dumped at the door who neither his family knew he was gay or that he had HIV. And they needed a safe place. And that's basically what I provided. We worked a lot with UCAN back then. And of course, Mercy, the Sisters of Mercy were an incredible group of people. And they saw what I was doing and they valued it and they supported it. Otherwise, I'd have never survived. And I had a great volunteer group. Well, let me go back a little bit farther. I needed, when I decided to do this, I decided I needed a pool of volunteers. Am I talking too much?
No, I'm very much enjoying it because, frankly, I just wanted to point out to the audience that I think you sold yourself short in the introduction, Billy. I think your history is the history of pride in Douglas County. It is the history of you've taken care of the queer community, and there wouldn't have been such a strong queer community without your input and support. Dane's still working at the gay archives. Come on, man. Don't sell yourself short. We absolutely adore you.
Kevin, I would have to agree. I will jump in here because, Billy, you've been a role model for me. And what I do in my everyday is like HIV is still here. It isn't a death sentence. The medications have come a lot farther. That increases the need for testing because people think it's a livable disease. But the history, and I think the Douglas County Gay Archives and the history that you started and solidifying that our history needs to be here. And we have been here for a long time. Ruby House was here, it existed, doing the, AIDS Memorial every World AIDS Day and all those pictures and the names of the people. It's important because that is our history. And those are people that we lost, people my age, your age, Billy. I mean, there's a gap in the age group because of the AIDS epidemic. And if like you mentioned, Mercy Hospital with the lesbian community jumped in to assist people. But I think that's, Gala was part of that and establishing Gala. And it was one of the largest rural LGBTQ. And that was you and Lelaine and multiple other people. I don't mean to burden you with all that responsibility, but it took a community, and I think that's what we're trying to continue today is like, how do you, like with the Umpqua Valley Rainbow Collective, the Douglas County Gay Archives, Tasha's House, we did have a P flag for a while and they coordinated the first Pride, but I think it's like letting people that help establish that we are here, we are queer, and we are part of the community. And I think that's a key piece that you really drove that. When I say the name Billy Russo, Billy, people look at me and go, "Oh my God, Billy, he's amazing," and it's just like, I know you are amazing. And take that in, and just like so many people still remember you. And when your name comes up, they're just like, yeah, if it wasn't for Billy Russo and the Harm Reduction Center, things would have been a lot different for Southern Oregon. And that's Pride, and that it was
Well,
around AIDS.
Real quick, yes, I do want to say that, Billy, I've been raised by this community of activists quite literally since I was 17 years old and first caught attention by walking down the hallways of Sutherland High School wearing a rainbow flag as a cape so that the upperclassmen would bully me instead of the younger kids because only one of my ears worked, so I couldn't hear what they were saying anyway, so it was totally fine. So ever since then, I have heard stories of you. Like if activism in Douglas County is a tomato plant, you've been the cage surrounding it and giving it support. I've been raised on stories of you. So I would like, if no one else has anything to say, I would like you to continue speaking, please. Thank you.
Actually, I want to say something as the person that is not in the queer community. Billy Russo and what you were doing in the mid 90s made me decide to stay in Douglas County. After moving here as a leftist advocate from the LA area, I thought I was out of my fucking mind, as did most of my friends when they found out where I was living. But you gave me hope. There are a few other organizations that existed and thinking if you could do that here, because I was a supporter, ally of the AIDS and the gay community in LA in Long Beach, California. And and so really you do need to take credit for it, because even if I know it makes more than one person do anything. It takes an organization of people doing a lot of shit to accomplish what you did. But you were the face out there, and you actually gave hope not only to the gay or queer community, to the other activist community in Douglas. So
well, you said that I was like the cage around a tomato. I kind of like that, but I was more like the roots. And I created a space where other people could prosper and show their stuff. And I managed to get credit for it all the time. But I was more of a catalyst. And, I nurtured the people around me and loved them. And they're the ones that shine, but somehow I got all the credit. That's a little pathetic.
Well, we all need to be a Billy Russo in our life, and in my opinion, we all need to support the ones we love and people who are downtrodden. I mean, that's just what life's about. I mean, who wants to be stick in the mud all about yourself? Come on, you need to be the roots or the trellis around the tomato plant sometimes. You can't always be the tomato itself. And,
Oh,
just to kind of foster the conversation a little bit more, I do kind of want to hear a little bit about Gala because you're right. It grew with you and Laline into one of the biggest Southern Oregon advocacies at the time. So I want to hear, if you can, how that came about. And, what was your time like at Gala?
Okay. Uh, well, we decided, I believe it was the end of 79, or maybe, no, it was 1980. Well, let me go back a little bit farther. Gary Reese, who none of you know, even though he is a kind of a historical figure in our community, um, he ran the gay center in LA, and I was part of the gay center. No, he ran the gay center in San Diego, and I was part of the center in LA. And he had this vision of us moving into the countryside. He felt we were way too ghettoized back then, and that the only way we could really gain acceptance was by just being ourselves and being out there in the country and not be so damn ghettoized. And he, nagged me. We were very close, and he bugged me and finally got me to come to Oregon, looking for land and a place to kind of set up a base camp. And this is where we ended up. And I really like this area because I live out on Willis Creek, and on 99, where you turn off to get here. In 1977, there was a big billboard saying, "Welcome to the redneck capital of the world." And I thought, yeah, this is where we need to be. And that's kind of how it started for me and a few others. And then later on, Laline joined us, and Don Kilhefner, and there was a whole bunch of other people. Harry Hay came through a number of times just to be supportive. But that's kind of how it got started. And there were people in the community. Chester Mortensen was one of them who would go around anybody he saw when he knew we were going to have a meeting and we were going to get together. Anybody he saw who looked like they might be, then it was gay and lesbian and trans. But he just would ask him and tell him about the meeting. And when we finally did get together, well, like the week before we got together, I worked at the VA then in the kitchen. I loved that job with about 50 other people. And I was trying to figure out how to come out to all of them. I didn't want to do it one at a time. I'm not good at repeating myself. And just wanted to get it over with. So I wrote a letter to the editor, and it appeared on Thanksgiving Day in 1980. And that kind of got people energized because it was, talked about a lot. And it also kept me busy at work for the next 10 years. But that's kind of what brought us all together in my mind. It was Chester getting out there and talking to people, and I think others did that too. Nova Begonia, who was really our first resident poet in the gay community, was doing the same thing, just really letting people know that we wanted to get together. And we did. I don't remember the date anymore. Oh, I think it was Good Friday that same. I don't know what the date was, but it was 1980. And we all met at a home in Round Prairie, Ken and Wes's home, which later became Mixed Company. They turned it into a damn speakeasy to raise money for us. But when we came together that first night, there was about 30 people in the room, and I was like, whoa. And I thought, well, how do I start this? And Laline was there, of course. And Laline and I had worked together for many years in Los Angeles. And I know what a powerful person she is. And so I did the smartest thing I could do. I introduced myself, and then I introduced Laline and asked her to lead us. And she did. And she led us, for quite a while. She was dynamic and powerful. And that's kind of how it started in 1980. And we immediately realized a great divide between the gay men's community and the women's community. And that was something that we worked on very hard to kind of find a way to bring these two different communities together. And oh shit, I hope you're still there because I just hit a button and I can't see anything.
You're still there. And while you're figuring out your video, I just want to plug in that Laleen unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. I asked her, but I'm going to do a special interview with Laleen because I agree. Laleen is powerful and dynamic, and I think she should be included.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you that we worked together over 50 years now. We started at the center in LA. I don't even know what year that was, 71, 72. But yeah, and she's the one to hear from. But and it was her idea. We also started a NOW chapter around that same time. The Equal Rights Amendment was still an issue, and we were still trying to get it ratified. And so that was, kind of that community too. But I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought. Something else I do quite regularly. I know what it was. NOW came up with this consciousness raising concept. And Laleen and I talked about it, and she talked, I listened. We thought that if we could create a consciousness raising process that could mainly help gay men listen better and communicate better and respect the differences between men and women. We didn't have a lot of trans people back then. We had a Santa Familia, but there wasn't a lot, Nova Begonia, but that I knew anyway. And there were a lot who were quiet and, didn't want anybody to know. But anyway, we came up with this process. It was 10 or 12 groups that, we'd get together and everybody commit to do it every week for 8 or 10 weeks. And we would deal with those issues. And it really helped. I mean, like men can learn.
I agree.
I know the first time, I grew up in New York, just an Italian kid in an Italian neighborhood. And, okay, I knew where the local gay bar was in the village, mafioso run. But I didn't have any real awareness of what was going on around me. And I was involved with this Maoist collective in Texas accidentally. And I ended up staying with them for a number of months, and they introduced me to the feminist movement. And I immediately, this is so right. But I would have never thought of it on my own, and I'd have just gone on being a dumb Italian kid looking for fun. And that was very important. And we tried to, I was hoping that with the other men in the community could kind of find that same kind of enlightenment to see that it's not all about us. It's not object, subject, everything. And consciousness raising really did it. And that made us a powerful community for a number of years. That and Mixed Company, the speakeasy, which raised a lot of money. We had a great newsletter and just about everything we needed. The 24-hour switchboard. I'd like to tell a story about that sometime, but it doesn't have to be right now. I'm kind of running out of things to say.
You know what I think is unique, and I'm going to jump in, is, Billy just talked about NOW and, the importance back then. And, in Oregon, we're putting through IP 33 today, trying to get that on the ballot in 2026. So things that, even though we've come a long way, we still have issues for women. We still have issues for the LGBTQS2. And it's 2025. And you're talking about, these same issues in the 70s that exist today. And I think that's what kind of puts together why Pride is so important, because we haven't changed much from what Billy just said to today. We have a lot of work. We have a lot of work ahead of us to continue, and you talked about the men and women, the lesbians and gays not working together. And we still have issues within our letters. And the trans community needs our support. And there is, it's dynamic that some of the things, so I think we could use some of those ideas and thoughts as like, how do we move forward faster, quicker, and make people realize that we need each other, man. That's what Pride's so important. It pulls everybody together. It's a month. typically 1 day events in communities, but it's so important to broaden that idea and thoughts and pull everybody together. But 365 days a year, we need that shit. We really do. And I think, it's just that's what I was listening to, Billy, is that the dynamics of back then, we still have some of the same challenges today. And so, but it also makes the importance of pride and, and continuing this battle.
Yeah. Something I'm seeing a lot, and this is actually I've heard comments like this from even some family members where I was one time I was talking about being a bit nervous to attend a pride parade just because I was younger at the time and I was worried about protesters. And my cousin said, "Why? Nobody cares anymore. You all have the right to get married now. Like it's not that big of it. Like I don't even know why you're having the pride parade to begin with." And at the time, I didn't have the knowledge and the experience and the statistics and the wit and the vocabulary to express how deeply incorrect that was, and how, corporate token, rainbow logos during Pride Month and the volley of voices, who complain about LGBT plus visibility, those things can often give the impression that there is no more to achieve, that we have achieved equality, but that couldn't be further from the truth, truly. If you look at the real facts of the differences in the way in the opportunities available to members of the LGBT plus community as opposed to people who are heterosexual and cisgender. And it just goes to what Dane was saying, that pride was extremely important in the stories that Billy is telling, and pride is extremely important today, and pride is going to be extremely important for the rest of our lives.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I honestly, because this is a progressive politics podcast, I do want to interject some politics into that. And bring to light to the our audience the hypocrisies of, frankly, the snakes in the grass, because we, as Douglas County residents, we're represented by House District 2, House District 9, and House District 4, which are currently all Republicans. Only one of them, House District 9, Boomer Wright, has never signed on to pretty much any anti-LGBTQ legislation except for a bill banning transgender athletes. But Virgil Osborne, who represents the majority of Douglas County, has jumped on board of all of them. He has been a co-sponsor, even a chief sponsor in a lot of retrospects. And Court Boyce is even worse. Let's not bring up the fact that he tried to ruin mail-in ballots. So pride is not only just a sense of community that we get in supporting each other and mutual aid, but in my opinion, pride is also the act of defiance that came with Stonewall in the beginning. And this is why I'm really excited to interview Lelaine, because they were telling me a story forever ago about their time at Stonewall, actually being involved in that. And I think it's really important to remember that, I'm a hardcore democratic socialist, frankly. And the revolution's coming, in my opinion. Stonewall was a perfect example of, if you deny rights to the underprivileged, it's only a matter of time before they take their rights in their own hands. Same with the Boston Tea Party. And so we cannot allow ourselves to be meddled by people who are like, oh yeah, I'm all supportive. And then the next thing you know, they slap us on the ass and say, hey, I'm going to shove this bill down your throat. I know it's not going to get passed, but it's going to make my base rally up and hate you guys even more. Hi, I hope you're having a good day. You know what I mean? It's a tongue-in-cheek approach, frankly, and it's lying to us to try and get votes. And that's my and I know the community needs to build bridges and not walls, especially. Not saying that we can't do that, but we also cannot we cannot deny ourselves the perspective of saying, yes, you're trying to be our friends, but you're still slapping me on the ass. At a certain point of time, when are we going to stop calling the piss rainwater? That's coming down on our heads.
Kevin, I think that's a great synopsis. But one thing you have to do, and when we did, I know you brought up Virgil, but Virgil agreed to meet with us for about 2 hours one evening. And I think the reality is the more you meet, and that's what I see, our biggest gap and our biggest obstacle is fear. People are fearful of going to our legislator, I used to go up with Basic Rights Oregon. I was a lone frickin' soldier from Douglas County. Nobody else bothered. And when you do put your face in front of him, like he immediately, once he found out, he went to high school with Ryan's mom. Another person with trans children identified their story and made it real. A white cisgender male talked about his journey with his daughter, who became, his son, and back and the confusion, but it was all about love. But I think you got to get in their face. You have to put it in front of them, and you have to make it real. And that's one thing that you can't let fear hold you back. You have to meet with your legislators. And I would say that's our biggest opportunity. We have a lot of people that don't take the time, don't care. Stonewall, you've been in our meetings. We have 3 or 4 people, and there's hundreds of LGBTQ in this community. And if they want their voice heard, and if they want change, they need to get their asses off their couch, off their phones, and get on the fucking street. Sorry about my language, and be there. They need to be at the rallies. Me and Ryan are at the rallies. You're at the rallies. Billy's at the rallies. But you know what? We're missing hundreds of LGBTQ youth that aren't at the rallies. How you make change is you get in their face. That flag in front behind me, I raised that up because I had to go to court. I'd lived here for 17 years and got discriminated against. And that flag was raised for 15 minutes because of that hate. But I didn't let it go. I keep meeting with my legislators, even if they're Republican. You got to make it real for people. You got to make it understand is like there is a gay man and living in this community, and we're here, we're queer, and we're not going anywhere. And so I think that's what we need to teach our youth, and that's hard. But you got to help them understand is like you can't be afraid. You can't let that fear take over, because if you let that fear take over, they've won. And everything they wanted to do, all those bills, but we got to call them out. We got to sit with them. You got to walk into, our Senator Smith's office and go, what the hell are you doing putting your name on these goddamn bills?
And not only that, but I'm going to let everybody speak in a second. I'm sorry, it goes. I saw Betsy unmuted first, and then Ryan is, frankly, we can't be afraid because that's how they get away from us. But just like Billy and you were talking about, Dane, a lot of the people in the queer community are vibrant, diverse, firebrands, who can get in people's face and stuff like that, that want to, and they just need that opportunity. And I'm hoping that exactly with just like these podcasts and things like that, that we can start showing these people and the community as a whole, you know what I mean? This is what we need to do, because I agree. We can't be afraid. We need to go stand up to these legislators and say, hey, it's not rainwater anymore. It's starting to smell like asparagus. And so, Betsy, you unmuted first if you'd like to say a word.
Yeah, I'll probably say more than one word. Uh, I'm gonna comment with Dane and what Billy had said. For one, consciousness raising, you're absolutely right. And having been an activist, a support person in the 1980s in Long Beach, California, with both the lesbian and gay community, you guys were more together than my observation of that. And I knew people in both communities had discussions about this particular divide, although the lesbian community was very supportive of no discrimination against AIDS, right? I mean, that was not a dividing point, but it was this cultural men against women, that kind of thing. So you guys were actually more progressive than Long Beach, California, which is the second largest city in LA County. But I think you're right about the consciousness raising, which leads me to the comment I wanted to make about what Dane said. So Dane and I have had discussions about the particular state representative and the hypocrisy of, or the politicking of politics, right? That you try to pander to as many people as you can, but push comes to shove, to me, has always been how they vote. Right. That really has to be the litmus test. And Kevin is absolutely right about Virgil Osborne and really the rest of our Republican representatives that represent Douglas County. We have 4 state representatives and a couple of senators, right? So in the different geographic areas. So But you're right. I wouldn't dissuade people from talking and insisting on making their legislators and elected officials talk to them because they represent all of us. They are politicians, they pander to their base to get elected, but once they're in office, their role is supposed to be where everyone's their constituent, and everyone should have equal access to their time and their attention, even if it doesn't persuade you. And it's always a good political tactic to say, well, I did ask him, right? We did ask him this. We played the game, right? There's play in that game. And then hopefully the younger people will become radical and say, fuck that game. Let's do this. All right.
Well, and I also think there's power in both because Dane is right. You can't come out there feeling weak stomached, just like if you go to a town hall and you expect to make a ruckus, what's the difference when you go to the state capitol and there's not an audience watching? That's just more personalized, in my opinion. That's just, you're actually making sure you're heard. And because that shows you have the energy, it shows you have the wherewithal, because a lot of these times, our generation is really social media and online focus. So a lot of times it's a big movement, a lot of puff and stuff. And then nothing really comes out of it because you can't expect a lot from a social media revolt. You know what I mean? So when you actually see those letters in your hand at the office, or when you see those individuals or those groups coming up to you and saying, "Hey, so you some bitch. So what's going on right now?" So, and I think that's an important point. Ryan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I just want to take a second to acknowledge that in relation to the other people on this call, I want to acknowledge that I have a much smaller scope of activism, particularly in Douglas County. But I did want to speak on my experiences with the Umpqua Valley Rainbow Collective and specifically the Pride events that we've conducted in relation to what Dane and Kevin and I think Billy mentioned a little bit about bravery in our younger generations. And I mean, at the risk of sounding a bit frivolous, I would say that I think that's really something to consider when we're talking about, the Pride celebrations, because these parades and these festivals, they're very fun and they're very happy and they're very colorful, and they are honestly a sign of privilege compared to, the celebrations that came in years before us. But at the same time, I do think there's something to be said for the fact that queer kids can show up and see their adults happy and smiling and expressing their opinions and being themselves bravely in the sunlight, with or without any protesters who show up. And I think the reason I want to mention this, and I guess just to state the importance of that and perhaps get others' opinions on it, is because that's how I got my start in activism, and that's how I first began to get interested in politics, and that's how I began to first realize how deeply unfair things currently are from the base of the system all the way to the top, and how very few simple logical changes can start true and powerful reform that would benefit every single person, not only in Douglas County, in Oregon, in America, in the world, through the ripple effect. But yeah, I just wanted to say that on the topic of bravery.
Thank you.
Well, and I do think, attending Pride, hosting these events and all these celebrations, especially in the day and age where we realize that we're kind of in a kind of like a mesh state. We've got our rights, but nobody really respects them. You know what I mean? Like, we can get married, but there's all these things that go against it. What's the court ruling now? When's the Supreme Court really going to change their mind? You know what I mean? And that's the cutting edge. And I think that another point you brought up that I think is super important. And Ryan, you're smart and you are amazing. And when you brought up that Pride festivals are a point of privilege, you know what I mean? Like, especially even in our redneck area, it is really it's a point of privilege because Roseburg, when they thought that the queer community had overstepped their bounds 2-3 years ago, refused to issue a Pride proclamation. It's at the behest of what their whims are at the time. And I think, besides just Pride and the parties, I I guess this is my nihilistic point of view saying that, I want the bricks through the windows, dude. I want the burning trash cans. Because frankly, the American Revolution happened for a reason. There was denied rights of self-sufficiency and self-freedom to the basic colonists and overtaxation. Well, we're denied our basic representative rights where it's at the bequest of the current administration, dude. And that's been dragging us along since Billy's time in the 70s. And that's truly, when's the time where, again, we're going to have that bravery to say, screw it? When are we going to finally break and crash out? You know what I mean? When are we going to start fighting the system? That's me, but it's also in the system that in this hyper-capitalist society that we can't really do anything like that because it also breaks the bounds of what we can make monetarily. I hear you, sorry.
Yeah,
one piece
that's kind of the thing I wanted to mention is that the bigger system is the problem, right? Because if we can divide people on this issue or that issue, that, this identity, that identity, then we have us fighting among each other, which has been very effective in creating the chaoses where we are right now. So, and going back to that comment about raising consciousness, right? Having these dialogues, which I think is part of the reason that Kevin and I really wanted to have these podcasts to start talking about, these issues. And there is and the problem when you divide, I have this one issue. If I'm only a homeless advocate, then I look at everything as the problem of homelessness and might ignore, it is a lot more complicated because it's the system. The discrimination is part of the system that needs discrimination no matter what the category is. And I think that is the politics of capitalism. That's the problem.
Well, I think we have an opportunity right now in our culture of our country and the leadership that we have is to pull everybody together, and together you can accomplish more. And like we have BIPOC communities, we have immigration, we have LGBTQS2 plus. There's so many issues, and right now is the time to pull everybody in because I think there is a common bond with a lot of community members, and we have made progress being who we are. And that's why I wear a rainbow tutu out on the street, man. It's just like, it draws attention and brings, hey, the dude's queer. And so, but also they know you. And that's what, like Ryan does that. And Billy has done that. Is like, that helps there has to be those people that are willing to just step outside the bounds and just go, hey, and raise a little hell. But I think you're right. I mean, I think right now is the time we could combine and bring a lot of people together around a lot of different issues.
And I really agree with you on that, Dan, because I mean, it's the hyper decay in our lifetime. You know what I mean? We've heard since the 1800s, and people have been theorizing about leftist philosophy that we will see the decay, capitalism in their lifetimes, which they died already. And so, but I think we can see it happening before our very eyes with tariffs, with them trying to make Palestine a beachfront condo and just displacing innocent human lives. It's just, we are literally in our lifetimes finally seeing the hyper decay of what is our class system, where they don't give a shit about the lower classes finally. They don't care about the small individual people and what makes them happy. And before I let you go, Ryan, is that I also agree, Bill, Dane, that, this is the time to get people together because they can see with their bare eyes what's happening. As much as it's the pandering can happen, we now have almost 1 year into a 4-year term where it's been nothing but denigration of basic human decency, in my opinion. Ryan, you're next.
I just wanted to say, Kevin, something you said reminded me of just something maybe a touch hopeful. That there's a talking point that I've seen in a lot of online feminist spaces, particularly ones that are aimed at helping women and assigned female at birth people defend against the rampant misogyny and the incels, if y'all know what that is. Not good, bad. And it's this idea that a lot of the hateful behavior that we're seeing from those types of people is an extinction burst. It's very, very, very loud, and it's very pervasive in the way that it affects all of our lives. But if you think about it from just the feminist view for a second, we are among the first generations who are able to be completely financially independent from men. And I feel like that turning point in society, that move toward equality, has ripple effects out to literally everything that we're talking about, from financial equality to LGBT plus equality. So I don't know, I guess what Kevin was saying reminded me of this idea that, of course, none of us can know for sure if this is an extinction burst, and perhaps that's just something I like to repeat because it makes me feel better and makes it easier to sleep at night. But I just wanted to get that out there.
Well, and I agree with you because that's like what I was just saying. But I also think that in the history of the world, when I started paying attention to stuff, because I love history, dude, medieval stuff, going back to that, there's always the progression era before a hardcore regression. You know what I mean? We had the Renaissance, then the Dark Ages. We had the birth of the Equal Rights Amendment and the freedom of speech in the 60s, and then we got Reagan and Nixon. And then, shit started to go good again. Got Obama, we got all these people. We got Trump one too. Now we got so now it's it's the progression and then a hard slap in the face. And I think we're in the hard slap in the face right now. And now it's our generation, Ryan, frankly, that is going to be in the rebuilding stages of, hey, what is leftist identity? Because when I look at, leftist politics right now, Democrat, social, all this other kind of stuff, it's like, where are they? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I want to see a Tea Party in the early 2000s type resistance. You know what I mean? They're standing on the corner, they're throwing random, they're just being ignorant. You know what I mean? And here we are, and I feel like we're weak little mouses. And I feel like it's our generation who has to again, because you're right. I think what separates us from more conservative people is just the basic belief that we want to take care of our community and not just ourselves. You know what I mean? It's more than I'm not thinking about myself and my own. I'm thinking about maybe some other people along the road. And I think that's just a core difference that I personally think I have when it comes to people who are more conservative.
I agree. That's a good vantage point, definitely.
So I'm going to interrupt to get us back on track to the end because we have 10 minutes or so. So
Well, then we've definitely talked about
what
now.
about covering more of what's happening right now? Because there's stuff happening that people may be timely for people to get involved, and then a little bit more about the future, what all of you see for the future, or what you want the future to be.
Yeah, okay, real quick then, somebody else can maybe I'd be more than happy to talk about the protests / demonstrations coming up. But real quick, okay, excellent. Kevin's giving me a thumbs up, so I will talk about that. But before I do, real quick, Douglas County Pride Parade is June 22nd. It'll be downtown. Please get in contact with myself, Ryan Behrman. I will try to make my email publicly available. Otherwise, you can reach out to me on Facebook and I will give you instructions on how to get involved with that. There's also going to be a festival happening in October. Details to be determined for that one. Then regarding the demonstrations that we have coming up, the first one is June 6th, which I am double checking. That is what
And while they double check, all their links will be in the description of this
Okay.
video. So please make sure to check them out.
Excellent. So this is a demonstration on Friday, June 6th, and that'll be at 12 p.m. along Garden Valley, if I remember correctly. Then we have the big one coming up, June 14th. It is going to be No King's Day. And for those of you who may not understand why we are partying down on that day and what makes that day so important, that is the unfortunate day of the year that we were cursed with our current president. So, showing up and demonstrating on that day is a little bit of a significance. Let him know that we do not wish him a happy birthday. Quite the opposite.
Thank you. And Dane, would you also like to go through some of the stuff we're doing? 'Cause again, I'm going to include all these links at the bottom. And so please feel free to join any of these meetings or reach out to anybody. I feel like they would really enjoy talking to you guys.
No, I just want to encourage people if you want to, be a part of organizing. We have the Stonewall Caucus. Join us. We have a meeting on the fourth Tuesday every month, and you're all welcome. There's a state caucus. But, I know this is more Douglas County focused, but there's a lot of prides down south. We started in Brookings on the 7th, and then you have a lull weekend because the rally's going on the 14th to retaliate against Snow Kings. But then you have down on the 21st in Grants Pass, 28th in Medford. And then you have the parade on the 22nd in Roseburg. So all month long. And I think the more we can support everything and bring a number to like Brookings Pride and Grants Pass Pride, Roseburg's Parade, and Medford Pride, it's important to show numbers. And it's fun. You can wear a tutu and run around and just have a good old time. And I would encourage join the rallies. It made me realize, like when we had 1,000+ people out there and 600+ people, it made me realize I'm not alone and my voice matters. And so please, and I encourage, I put in the chat, every legislator should know your name. And if they don't, you're not doing it right. Your legislator should know your name. And that's important. If they agree with you or not, they can't really hate you when they know your name. It's a little bit more difficult when they know your name.
Well, I think they can hate you when they know your name.
I think
They
that
don't have to,
they
they
might
don't
have.
even have to know you. They just have to know your name and they hate you.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I can testify to that. Okay.
yeah, I was gonna say, Dane, you smile a lot, and that's why people like you. Some people don't smile, so consider that.
Yeah, I like to say they're pissing on my head a lot, dude. So yeah, they don't like me.
So, Billy, any last thoughts
Well, not
about the
really.
future? About the future.
Well, okay, this is the closest I can come to that. We talked about pride a lot, and pride's a whole bunch of different things. And for me as an organizer, uh, pride kind of is a vehicle that gives me access to a large pool of volunteers when I get one of my brainstorms, which I don't have anymore. But that's what pride, it's like and we saw it in the AIDS epidemic. We really took charge because we had the mechanisms in place. We had pride. And I think we need to keep that alive. And, what's happening on the 22nd and what's happening in October, these are, more opportunities to grow our base. That's the way I look at it. I don't think much about the future otherwise.
I agree with Dane. Pride should be 365 for people like us. We're here, we're queer. Don't get used to it, dude. Don't expect us to go. I was born here. So just before we end this video, I want to make a couple of you know, shout outs to the future. One is that look forward to some interviews with me and Lillian, and hopefully, Billy, you gave me a great idea. I'll reach out to you about maybe doing a switchboard story. And we'll get your time on that because I think you really enjoyed that. So let's get a video on that for people to hear about. And also,
Any last comments from Dane or Ryan?
I would just
Pride.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
No, I'm so sorry, Dane. I just wanted to say I hope to see you at Pride, and if you want to volunteer, even better. Dane.
Be proud and resist. We have to resist. And I just appreciate the invitation to come into this. I think, having Lillian come back. Nominus might be another group down in Jackson County. They run the Fairy Gathering group. And they might be Nominus. I'll send you a note. And they're just another, they've been around a long time. Billy knows about it. They have the Wolf
Fairy
Creek
Sanctuary. Oh, I do know that place. They do the Octagon, and they put the yurt out every year. I've heard of them a lot, actually.
They might be another group that could bring a different picture of LGBTQ to this area too.
100%. Betsy, you had one thing you'd like to interject because it's very important and timely.
About this topic, I was just going to thank people for being here. So we're going to go into, the next part. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, one, I want to thank everybody for coming to our video today. Uh, it has been, honestly, in my opinion, one of the best we've put out so far, and we've only recorded 4, so, but still be proud because it's gonna we'll have one next year. And was saying that we're going to go into the next part of the video, which is, this is our weekly wrap up of kind of going up what's going on in Douglas County, Southern Oregon, and why it's important to progressive politics. And Betsy, if you had something you'd like to say.
Yeah, my pet peeve, most recently is really about what's going on or what's the matter with the city of Roseburg. I talked about, some litigation going on perpetuated by the city manager because she doesn't like some people who oversee her job, questioning her job and her capabilities of doing it. But the other thing that part of this is going on is this idea of parking downtown. And this sounds like a minor pet peeve, but this is like the third time in the last maybe 5 years that the city has wasted resources on convening a committee on decide whether to make people pay to park downtown for the business people. So we also did a thing on budgets. And so one of the things that people don't really appreciate is that budgets decide how all of our government uses our resources. I mean, it's particularly true in local governments who can't run deficits like the federal government. So I'm going to post some information about the committee that's been set up to determine whether people should pay to park or be limited to park in downtown Roseburg, primarily because of the problem with now paying, the city pays, I think it was couple couple $100,000 this year to have city enforcement the parking, yet it doesn't generate any income. Well, not enough income to pay for it. So just the stupidity about government and government decisions. Um, the other thing is that I wanted to bring up, Kevin and I were talking about, is Job Corps. And we're probably going to do kind of a thing about Job Corps, an actual show, maybe just even a pre-recorded show about Job Corps. But in the mid 1990s, I was a literacy coordinator for Umpqua Community College, and Wolf Creek Job Corps. I was part of a committee that oversaw the basic education, adult basic education, which included the Job Corps, and I was extremely impressed with the Job Corps then. And even 10 years ago, I took somebody that was coming out of high school to go look at our Job Corps, and I was also very impressed. And what impressed me most was a student who was getting ready to graduate, who had come from out of the area, and said how great it was. He learned a skill that's going to make him a living wage job. It's going to change his whole life. He was in trouble a lot when he was a teenager. And so I was joking and asked him if he was being paid to, was he the, student ambassador? And he goes, no, no, this is free. It's just my opinion. I think that it's one of those, chopping block things. It's on the chopping block right now, but even over the years, I thought Job Corps might be a good way to help people get and stay out of homelessness.
Well,
The services are intensive. And so, I think it's one of those things that's happening right now, and there could be a way for us to help inform.
and just my piece on that, because I think we should do a whole interview about it, is I lived on Little River Road my whole life out in Glide. I knew Job Corps people. Job Corps changed my family's life. I've had 2 aunts and 1 uncle who's worked at Job Corps, doing everything from training firefighters to helping culinary arts to training social studies and just generalized education. Job Corps has done so much, and I think it's really the right wing's attempt to really start dismantling what's left of the good old FDR leftism that has been really the basis of our country. Job Corps and those social job programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps, because they're also cutting a lot of the youth corps and the OCC and stuff like that. These are what brought a lot of people, including myself. I worked for OCC for quite a while, is out of poverty, and it gave them a great opportunity, gave them great experience, gave them great contacts, gave them, you know, now I want to live in the woods my whole life. I was born out in Glide, and I was one of those regular Douglas County kids who wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. You know what I mean? This was not a place that encouraged my thinking, that encouraged what I wanted to do. And it was just, I would break my back logging like my daddy and my daddy's daddy. So I was about to head the heck out until I found firefighting in OCC, and I realized that I don't have to be cutting trees the entire goddamn day. I could be thinning. I could be cutting around old people's houses and making preventable stays. I could be a botanist, making sure the Doug fir beetles don't wipe out the sugar pines out at Horseshoe Bend. There's so much things that go in with the Oregon Conservation Corps and the Job Corps in general that I don't think people realize that bring our society out of poverty. We took kids from Phoenix Charter School. Maybe we'll have to talk about Phoenix Charter School since they didn't get renewed too. A lot of the people who are perceived as bad kids who are just frankly have bad ADHD, who have bad learning problems, and just need a little bit more helpful hand in making sure they get on the right course. When I was teaching forestry at OCC to those kids at Phoenix Charter School, they would come out and they would be, come from these really bad places, sometimes even experiencing homelessness. But you got them out in the woods, got them with their friends. They had a great time. They got a little bit of money at the end of the day, and it made our forest a better place. I think it's a crying shame for us to start dismantling one of the gifts FDR left us. Anything else anybody has to say before we cut her?
I'd like to thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. And I enjoyed interacting with you, all of you.
Here's till next time, each and every one of you, because I'm sure I want to talk to all of you in the future. And like I said, Billy, I really do want to do a switchboard episode because I saw that twinkle in your eye and that smile when we brought it up. So I think us doing a little personalized, maybe half an hour on your stories, I would love that.
Well, thank you. I look forward to it.
All right, thank
Well,
you. Oh, go ahead. Dane, did you want to say something?
I just want to say thank you again. It was great. Love all of you. You're amazing.
You're all amazing. Ryan, before I cut us out.
Nope. Have a great day.
All
Well,
right, thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on the Southern Oregon Progressive Podcast series. If you want to see a change in the world, you know what to do. Go out and organize. I'm Kevin Bell, and with me is Betsy Cunningham. As always, thanks